You are listening to Themes and Memes, a different kind of movie review. My name is Adam, and with me here I have my co-host Aaron. How are you doing today, Aaron?
Good. Good to talk to you again, Adam.
Yeah, it is good. If listeners have been tuning in regularly, they may have noticed that on our most recent episode, we did something a bit different. Usually what we do is, record things over Skype after having watched films separately, but on this occasion, we're actually going to review a film that we watched in person because,
that's right.
As per the last episode, I was actually staying in LA with Aaron, and we did a whole bunch of things over the course of that week, one of which was to watch the film Tomorrowland together. Mm-hmm. So this is a bit of a I suppose this is a little bit of a special review in that sense, because this is actually a film that me and Aaron sat down on the couch together and watched on the laptop.
Yeah.
Which is the first.
The collective viewing experience that the films, like sitting down in a theater, the collective viewing experience is part of the whole appeal of going out to the movies and all that. So it's similar to that. We were sitting at home, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was nice. Yeah. Nice change.
It was a nice change, and it was something kind of novel as well. One thing we didn't do though was we didn't really talk about the film much after watching it.
No,
we
had so much going on though.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. I was starting to come down with the kind of flu or whatever it was at that point as well, so I wasn't feeling the best. But I think it worked out for the best really, because it leaves us with more to talk about now, because I think if we talked about it at the time, we might have run out of things to talk about in the actual podcast.
Yeah. And we did do that live podcast, if you want to call it live. We were just in person. Yeah. The last episode that we're talking about. So we retold our adventures of going up to LA, popping into the entertainment liaison office at the Pentagon. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen to that episode. That was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun to do. The actual the adventure itself, the Enterprise itself was fun, and the recording was fun because again it was the first time that me and Aaron had actually met in person, and we actually sat facing each other and recorded it and real life together.
I think it was also a good way to remember what we actually did, because it was fresh off the event itself, and our memories were still pretty clear. So now we have a record of ourselves retelling the story right after it happened, more or less. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, definitely. That was definitely a big part of it. So it was definitely very, very cool doing that. And I had a great time. I had a great time in LA, and really enjoyed it. I'm still stoked that we managed to pull it off.
You and I are doing our best to put the entertainment liaison office on the list of LA tourist sites. That's what we're doing. It needs to make it on there, like the tourism websites. Like, you must see the entertainment liaison office. Yeah.
Before long, you'll have one of those those big sort of like those little open buses that you get.
The Hollywood Studios.
They'll be like with a whole bunch of tourists popping by the Oppenheimer Tower.
The TMZ tour will come by. Look, there it is. TMZ. That's exactly what the TMZ tour folk want to see, is that office.
Yeah. Gosh, just imagine that.
Oh man. So yeah, that was good trip, and we got a lot done. So yeah, that was awesome. And yeah, watching this film was getting something done too. It's funny with this film because we had wanted to watch it months ago before it came out even. I mean, I remember watching the trailer, and immediately when the trailer hit, I was like, whoa, this is one we got to do. I could tell just right away.
Yeah. I wasn't quite so sure about it. Not that I had any doubts, but it was the fact that I didn't really. I think I saw the trailer, and for some reason I think it might have been sort of preoccupied or whatnot. I didn't think that much of it, but I thought, okay, we'll give it a look. And it just so happened that on my flight from London to Los Angeles, the movie was showing on the plane. Yeah. So I managed to see it before I arrived in LA. But then I also managed to get a digital download. So once I was actually in LA at your place, we managed to watch it together.
Yeah.
So I've seen it twice.
I had really wanted to see it. It was tough because theaters weren't carrying it, or it came and it went real fast or something. Yeah. It's just tough to get to. It really annoyed me.
It was the same thing in Glasgow. I mean, it's like what happened with Ex Machina. You know, it was promoted. It was supposed to be in theaters, but then when you actually, went to look at like viewing times, they just weren't there.
Yeah.
And like it may have been screening for a week or something like that.
You know what? Chappie I had a trouble with too. So we've had trouble with a lot of movies lately. It's weird.
It was very, very weird. There's been a few films like that this year which have been fairly well promoted, but when you actually try and track them down at the cinema, it's like, oh, it's not showing yet, or it's already been shown and closed, or whatever. So. Yeah.
Well, the Chappie thing was the reason I ended up watching The Fast and the Furious instead, because I couldn't watch Chappie. Yeah. So something good happened out of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Uncle certainly got some entertainment.
Yeah. Well, I watched it with Uncle, actually, so that was worthwhile, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Yeah, Tomorrowland. I'll say, back to the trailer again, watching that originally, one of the things that got me was just the concept of Tomorrowland, because that was already... It's a Disney concept, and this is a Disney movie, and I knew that they were building on what Tomorrowland already is. I'm like, oh, okay. And what Tomorrowland is a section of the Disneyland theme park. It's broken up into various lands. There's Adventureland, Storybook Land, Dog and Pony Land, and then there's Tomorrowland. I made up one of those lands, by the way. But anyway, Tomorrowland is more or less the section of the park that Walt Disney, and this was like a pet project of him, it was his area to give park goers a vision of the future, like this visionary outlook of the future. So it's the futurism part of Disneyland, very much a project of Walt Disney himself. And just you could go on and on about what Tomorrowland in the park is, but then they went on to make this movie about that, or based on that at least.
I've never been to Disneyland, and despite being in LA for a week, it wasn't really something I was that interested in.
We didn't make it.
We didn't make it there. I mean, I think I saw it from
we drove by it from the highway. It's not far off. Yeah,
you can see kind of like the entrance and the Anaheim turnoff.
You can see that big fake mountain that's like really ridiculous. You can see that.
Yeah, I saw that, and then there's all the hotels that service the park as well. Those fancy hotels with like the big theme rides and stuff, like little mini versions of Disneyland or something. But this was all new to me. I didn't know anything about Tomorrowland, the ride, or the section of the park. I didn't know anything about the history. All I knew was that it was a film with George Clooney in it, and it was a Disney film. And it was obviously aimed at children, and that it definitely seemed to contain some relevant themes and memes, especially in regards to technology. And so I think that's probably the main focal point of this film in terms of what we're going to be talking about today. Is this I suppose the target audience and the whole concept of technology, but there's also a lot of other stuff going on as well.
Just science in general.
Well, actually, it's science. That's a better way of saying it.
Yeah, science more than technology. And the scientist, kids and adults, well, just individuals who themselves are interested in pursuing science as a career, or even more just as something they like to do, So you got the main character being... what's the main character's name? Is it Casey, right? The girl? She's like a teen girl. But
pretty sure, yeah.
Anyway, it's a teen girl is the main character. She is the daughter of a NASA rocket scientist, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
And she herself holds her dad in high esteem. He's like a hero of hers. And she, too, is kind of like this child prodigy sort of type. She flies around these little mini helicopters and all this stuff. So she's into science, too, and she's inspired by her dad. And she's very much the optimist, too. So
yes, very much the optimist.
So that's a big part of this movie as well. Anything you want to build on there, Adam?
Yeah, well, I think... there's a heavy emphasis on optimism in general, on optimism, on science. They're really placing science up there on the altar. Really sort of lionizing it and worshiping it and promoting it as being almost a religion in some way, at least with the religious qualities. I think there's also some interesting little pieces of script in the film as well regarding the whole concept of optimism. I think one of the lines that sort of caught my attention was the fact that she was in a debate with her dad, because what was happening at the beginning of the film is that her dad, the rocket scientist, was all depressed because what was happening was the rocket launch site, the NASA rocket launch site, was being dismantled because of basically the government had stopped the funding. They were closing down the program. People had become pessimistic about the concept of like space travel and technology and science and all this kind of thing. So her dad was saying,
NASA had no future. NASA's going under. Oh, it's very sad. Yeah. It's very sad.
Very sad. And there's there's a couple of interesting little nuggets in the credits, which we'll get into a bit later on. If you recall those, Aaron.
I do. I mean, NASA was big in this, obviously. Like the dad worked for NASA. The big issue with the daughter was that she was angry that the rocket launch site was being torn down, and she was doing everything in her power to delay the demolition of the site.
Well, she was sabotaging it.
Yes, exactly. She was a criminal in that sense.
She was it's a terrorist, actually.
Yeah, could be.
I mean, that was the sort of feel I got, because there were
what, the dad, when he kind of bails her out when she gets in trouble, and he said that she could have been in trouble for terrorism, but it's because of him she got off.
Yeah, that's right. And he made all these references to like what was it, Department of Homeland Security?
Yeah, that's it. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, big on NASA. I mean, she's wearing a NASA baseball cap the whole time.
Oh, that's right. The whole movie through, she's wearing that the logo of NASA on her hat. Yeah.
And like whenever it falls off, she's like it's a big crisis, and she's got to find it, put it back on again. It's like it's kind of like what do you call it?
It was comical, really.
Yeah, it was quite comical. So I guess just straight off the bat, we can say that NASA definitely had some heavy involvement in this, and we know that for a fact.
They had to. We do. But I mean, even if we didn't, we still would, because of inferring all this. You can just tell.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I guess should we give a sort of a brief outline of the plot? I mean, the plot itself is somewhat complex, especially for a children's film. It does go all over the place, and there are a lot of plot twists, and there's a fair bit of complexity for a children's film.
It would definitely be confusing if you're a kid. I don't think a kid would really be able to make distinctions between like the real and the fantastical. They would just kind of jumble it all together if they watched this.
I actually think that was one of the intentions of this film after watching it and thinking about it, because again, I had to really pay attention to actually figure out and sort of key into what was actually happening.
It was complex. It was complex in a sense that an adult film is complex, and the adult comes out of the theater like, "What happened?" You know what I mean? That experience that we're all familiar with.
Well, yeah, I mean, you watch a Disney film and you think, well, I don't have to pay too much attention or do too much thinking here, because it's all going to be fairly simple.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't. It was actually very, very confusing. And I think that's probably, and I feel intuitively that this was, probably done deliberately in order to basically ram a whole bunch of ideas through without really giving any particular definitive conclusion about anything, and leaving the child audience in a state of confusion, whilst having imbued them with a whole bunch of different ideas relating to, again, things like science. There's other ideas that humans destroying the planet, global warming is brought up a number of times.
All sorts of neo-futurist ideas. Very apropos when we're talking about Tomorrowland here. I mean, that's exactly what I expected from this movie, like science, technology, utopian future, of course, an optimistic view, same view that Disney had for the future. So yeah, this is all just in line with all that. And as you're saying, the sort of method they're using here, where the fantasy and the things that are more real, I guess, in this film, if you can even say that in a movie. But anyway, I mean, the blurring of all that is very much has Disney magic written all over it, and the conjunction of the high spiritual ideals and the hard physical realities, and coming into causing real magical changes in the world. It's all part of their process going on here, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, as you say, that there are a lot of points in the film where you're going from what is fairly close to a realistic real life scenario and then straight into fantasy. Like straight into it with very little explanation.
There's a whole fantasy world in this, which is Tomorrowland is the fantasy world. I guess just go ahead and try to explain what Tomorrowland is and a basic sort of overview of what this movie is.
Yeah, well, again, kind of complex, but what it is from what I'll do is I suppose I'll explain sort of the basic plot outline, and in doing so, hopefully people will get a sort of a general idea of what Tomorrowland is supposed to be in this film. Yeah. And what happens is after Casey is arrested for trying to sabotage this NASA installation and stop it from being torn down, she's put in the jail, and once her father comes to bail her out, she collects her belongings, and in her belongings she finds this little badge with a T on it. It's just a little sort of
it's a pin.
Just a pin badge. Yeah,
just like you buy at the Disney souvenir stores.
That's
what it looks like to me. It looks like a Disneyland souvenir.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah. But once she realizes that as soon as she touches this little pin, she's automatically transformed, or sort of teleported or whatever into another world. She finds herself in this big field, like the Wizard of Oz or something.
Of golden wheat. Yes.
Yeah.
There's an Oz-looking city in the background.
Yeah, a big, tall, futuristic, shiny-looking city, with big, tall, shiny buildings. It wasn't like Emerald or anything like that, but it was very, very Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it looked like the Emerald City without the emerald color.
But basically, yeah.
In the fields of gold, yes.
In the fields of gold, indeed. Yeah.
Definitely.
But every time she gets given this badge somehow. It's not explained how she's given it, but she comes into possession. Yeah, touches it. She's transformed, and then as soon as she doesn't touch it, she's back in reality again. So she's just sort of popping between universes or dimensions or realities or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And so that's basically where it starts off. And then she eventually is tracked down by a little girl.
Yeah, that's right.
Who's
trying
right?
to that's
Athena,
the character's name. Yeah, that's another symbolic name. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. I think she first goes to, she tries to find, actually what happens is the Tomorrowland badge appears to run out of power, and she finds all of a sudden that she can't touch it and be transformed or transported to this other world anymore. She goes on eBay and she looks for another retailer or some kind of other store which are selling these badges, and she travels to some other city and speaks to these two people, this odd couple running this shop, this kind of fantasy sort of sci-fi shop, like a comic store or something.
It looks like a comic shop.
Something along those lines. And they sort of start interrogating her as to where she got the badge from and all this kind of stuff, and she won't give them any answers. But then all of a sudden the Athena girl turns up, and it turns out that these people running the store are robots.
They're so bad robots. The
bad robots, and then her and Athena manage to, evade the robots and escape, and they plant a bomb and actually blow up this comic store. So again, we've got some kind of the whole sort of terrorist type theme being injected a little bit there.
Yeah, a little bit.
Which is a bit weird. Yeah.
I could digress on this, but I won't. I just won't right now. Just keep going.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult enough getting through the actual plot.
Just keep going.
Her and Athena managed to make off in a car and start heading towards a particular location, and they eventually happen upon this sort of old house out in some rural area where the George Clooney character is living.
That's right.
And he's actually introduced at the very, very beginning of the film, because it's one of these films where the first scene is the ending scene, etc. But anyway, they stumble across to the George Clooney's house, and he's kind of he's
a recluse.
As being very reclusive, but a genius as well, and his house is full of gadgets, and he's like
protected by a hologram dog.
It reminds me of the Doc from like Back to the Future or something like that.
Same sort of idea.
Same general kind of idea.
Similar character.
But whilst all this is going on, they're being pursued by these kind of Secret Service type robots.
Jim Carrey on a budget.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was just the description that came to mind, because if people have seen the film, you see the kind of lead Secret Service robot that's chasing them does look like a cheap, like Jim Carrey on a budget or something like that. You know,
it's funny.
It was quite funny. But I kind of got the feeling that perhaps they wanted Jim Carrey, but he said no. So they just found the next guy. Like they went to the Jim Carrey lookalike agency or something. You know?
Hey, can you make that weird face that Jim Carrey makes? Hey, that's pretty close. We'll go with you.
Yeah. Something like that. But anyway, so the agents turn up at the George Clooney character's house. Athena had by this stage has gone off. She's left, and so the Casey girl is left there with the George Clooney character, and he initially doesn't want to let her into the house, and she has to wait outside in the rain. But then she sort of ends up fooling him into letting her in, or she kind of breaks her way into the house because she's a genius and whatnot. By the time she gets into the house, this Jim Carrey Secret Service agents turned up and is trying to get in. We don't really know why this is all happening, but there's obviously a threat. They want to escape it, and so they do some crazy. They get into some crazy contraption that Clooney's built. Like a bathtub that's actually a rocket, and it launches them out of the house and away from danger. So it's all. Again, we're talking. Really crazy fantasy stuff.
But this is all happening in constantly. The real world. This isn't even in the fantasy world. So this is all supposed to be real, I'll mind you.
This is all happening in the real world, but it's all complete fantasy. In terms of like what's actually happening. It's because
of the inspiration they took from the fantasy world that he's able to make such a thing.
That's right. That's right.
That's the idea.
That's the idea. Yeah. But before they actually escape the house, she goes into the George Clooney's little kind of. He's got a kind of control room or something. It's like his main kind of
with all the
workspace.
It's like where all the security cameras. Like he's got the panel TVs where he's surveilling things, and the controls for other stuff, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and in this little control room, he's got a timer on a countdown, and it's got like 58 days, however many hours, however many minutes and seconds, blah, 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 and it's counting down to something. And she's saying, well, what is this? What are you counting down to? And I think, he initially tries to resist actually telling her what it means, but she eventually wrestles that out of him. And he explains to her, I think, that I'm not sure if this happens now at this point in the film or later on, but he explains to her that basically what it is that he has scientifically figured out that because of humans being bad and destroying the planet and being irresponsible consumers and whatnot, the world is actually going to end and on a very specific date. He's actually predicted the date that the world will end. She. I think there's some dialogue that she's saying, well, that's not necessarily an absolute, we make our own futures. And as she's talking about this, he's got another little screen which says, 100%, and it goes down to 99%, which indicates that her presence and the fact that she talking about, the fact that she's sort of being optimistic has actually changed the probability. She's actually sort of swayed the likelihood of this happening and reduced it somewhat. So it's inferred that she's so amazingly talented and
mind over matter is what it is.
Mind over matter, exactly.
That's the idea. Yeah,
that's right. And once the George Clooney character sees that she has had some kind of power to actually affect the probability of the world ending and reduce it, he becomes much more interested in her, and he agrees to take her to Tomorrowland. So rather than her simply having to, touching this pin and sort of being transported there momentarily, he agrees to actually take her there properly. And I can't remember.
Because he has another like thing that they can get there by. He himself had a pin too, because he was a kid like her that was initiated into this secret world when he was a kid and all that. So that's his backstory. And so, that's why she is told, the Casey character is told to go see him by Athena, because he's a guy who can help her. And the whole time, she's trying to get back to the Emerald City, this Tomorrowland place. She's like, okay, I got to get there. and she's told to go see George Clooney about it, and so he eventually does take her in that whatever pod it is, and they finally make it back to the, what do we want to call it? It's not a dreamland, it's not a spiritual land, ethereal.
Well,
like, what is
it's
it?
like it seems to be inferred that it's some kind of alternate dimension, like a parallel reality. It's kind of got that it's touching on the whole theory of quantum physics and infinite possibilities, infinite realities coexisting at the same time. You know, all that kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of theoretical science in there, but basically what they do is, I think they go to Paris, don't they? And it turns out that the Eiffel Tower was actually a secret rocket.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They all they met up with Athena by this point. So her, Athena, and George Clooney jump at the rocket. They get blasted off towards the moon, but the rocket turns back around and starts heading towards the Earth at this really fast speed, and it, somehow goes through a wormhole or something like that and pops into another dimension. So by the time it gets back to Earth, they're actually in Tomorrowland. They're
Tomorrowland, Earth.
Yeah, they're in the Tomorrow. So it's they're basically sort of whether you want to call it time travel, jumping towards the future into the Tomorrowland, or some alternate reality or whatever. It's another reality of some description, and they arrive there to find that the people who operating Tomorrowland have become kind of fascistic.
Yeah, things have gone bad because earlier in the film, Casey did go to Tomorrowland and get little glimpses of it, and it was like real utopian and cool, and everything was great. But now things have really gone hill now that they've made it back here at this point in time.
Yeah, it basically looks like a police state, because as soon as they arrive, they've got the was it Hugh Laurie character? I've forgotten what his name is. He's a robot as well. But they're basically sort of told that they shouldn't be there, and George Clooney gets telling off and saying, look, we told you that you had to leave and you couldn't come back here. What the hell are you doing here? And who the hell is she? What's going on here? And he tries to explain to them that there's been this big, that things have changed, and that the world is not necessarily going to end, because he's discovered that, through the optimism of this young genius, the future has been altered in some way, or the probabilities of the future have been altered in some way. And I can't remember exactly what happens there, but there's some kind of conflict. Yeah,
it gets weird, as you can plainly see from the retelling of this. It's like you said, it's hard to tell what the heck is going on the whole time.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult to tell what's happening the whole time. And there's conflict. We know that much. There's Tomorrowland is run by a bunch of robots who are convinced that humanity don't deserve to be given all this new technology and all this
because they can't handle it, and they're just going to basically let the world die, and then they'll continue in their Tomorrowland because that's all that will be left. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea, and this is one of the things which is played on heavily throughout the film, is the whole concept of humans destroying the planet, of humans being completely irresponsible. And there's even this bit of dialogue or monologue from the Hugh Laurie character, or whatever his name is. I'm not sure if I get the actor's name right, but you know the guy. He's actually talking about the fact that there's no, that he's questioned as to, well, if the world's ending, why don't you guys tell the people of the world that they've got a chance to change it? And he says, well, there's no point in telling humans, because all humans will do is repackage it and turn it into a form of entertainment. He says you'll basically run towards your own destruction.
That's right. You'll embrace it. Yeah, like you want it. Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, if people have seen the film, or if they're going to see the film, I'd really pay attention to that bit of dialogue there, because it's very, very interesting. Very, very sort of quite profound, because some of the stuff he says is really quite resonant with the society we're living in today, in terms of what he's saying, that you human beings you'll take the end of the world and you'll commodify it, you'll turn it into a form of entertainment, and you'll run towards your own destruction. And
you'll enjoy it.
There are some pretty deep psychological truth to that, I think. Which many other authors have actually touched on in the past. But I mean, in terms of what happens after that, it's kind of hard to say, because we're now in Tomorrowland, we're now in complete fantasy land, and so there are no boundaries really. I mean, things there's so many crazy things going on all at once.
You know what's happening is Tomorrowland is the scientific inspiration of what the utopian future should be. And so, it's just an idea, right? It's an ideal place. And so that's what it was. So as the world itself is inevitably going towards destruction, Tomorrowland 2 becomes dark. And so you lose hope. So your hope is the Tomorrowland ideals. So that just even goes dark as well. So there's, the idea of the real world and then the ideal world, and again, bridging the gap between the two by the optimistic point of view, the alchemical sort of idea where you take the ideal and you make it real. So all that stuff is obviously going on here.
Yeah, and it's going on in a literal sense as well, because what we discover is that there is the people in Tomorrowland, the robots, are actually sending some kind of signal or radio message back through to the real world. It's some kind of message, some kind of ethereal message, I guess, being integrated into all of the Earth's communication, media, etc., and the message is basically that the world is fucked and that it's going to end, and of course they end up challenging this and saying, you're deliberately doing this, and they try to justify it. So they've got that whole there's a literal it's aspect to that.
This movie is so odd because it's in one way it's perpetuating the idea that's so popular at the moment of that humans are destroying the planet and inevitably we're coming to the end of the world. And that much is very real because we can see all the evidence. Here's the evidence we have, blah, 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 blah. So it's putting that out there and repeating it. However, at the same time, it's saying sort of being doomed in your thinking and being pessimistic is the last thing you should do, which is odd. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and what all you have to do is be an optimist, and then you'll be able to do something about this inevitable, it's not inevitable anymore because you're optimistic, but you can change things, right?
Well, it's that whole the whole idea of basically creating your own future, of creating your own fate. And so there's a lot of I suppose juxtaposed ideas in terms of this being an absolute, but also the idea of this being in our control. And so there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of conflict and a lot of sort of bits of script and things, all to do with concepts of destruction versus creation and sort of versus optimism. And there's that line that the Casey character keeps referring to, which her dad had apparently taught her, where she says the way the world works is there's two wolves are fighting. One of them is an evil wolf and one of them is a good wolf. And she says, well, which wolf wins? And the answer is the wolf you feed. So it's an interesting in terms of creating an allegory for that message. The whole concept of combat and struggle. That you've got to. It's kind of putting across the idea that even in optimistic terms, one must use force and one must kind of fight. And I found that kind of interesting given the target audience. So I guess it's just one of those another one of the nuggets that I picked up on. Yeah. But I mean, where do we go from here?
Let's just mention when you're talking about the target audience. Obviously, part of the point of this movie, the point, I guess you could say, is to sell a scientific career to children would be one thing. And that's, if you're interested in science, go after that because that's what's going to save the world and all that. And, you read so many white papers and they talk about, we need to get kids involved in science. And especially, I've read a lot of papers that specifically say this. They say, we need to make sure that we get young girls involved in science. And we need to do everything we can to incentivize their participation in all these science projects, at schools, extracurricular activities, all that. We're like, we need to get these girls on board. We need to do it now. And lo and behold, the character in this film is a young girl, and she's into science. And I would say that this film is part of that project that the white papers are talking about. Like, let's get girls interested in science here because we have to.
That's absolutely what this film is about. And so, far, more than just being a a film that's directed at a younger audience in general. Sort of a young adult teenage audience. It's actually directed at females, I would say, as well.
Yeah, more so than boys. Definitely more so.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the George Clooney character as the sort of the male, sort of prodigy, but she is definitely the I suppose the central leading character.
Definitely.
Yeah,
and he is almost, I don't know, he's not quite like a father to her, but like for a young girl, maybe a young girl would view him as that just because. That's what's gonna. I don't know. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's weird family dynamics going on there because she does seem to have a fairly good relationship with her father, and she really, respects him and admires him a lot because of his involvement with NASA and rocket scientists and whatnot. But at the same time, he is also become very pessimistic about the future, given the fact that, as we discussed, the whole NASA program is being shut down.
Yeah.
And so perhaps, and of course, when she initially meets the George Clooney character, he's very, very similar to the father, a genius, but completely pessimistic because he's basically given up.
He's been jaded by everything, yeah.
Yeah, totally jaded by everything. But this all changes towards, as the film progresses, once he realizes the spark of genius within her, and decide a valuable asset, I suppose. Yeah. And something worth, or somebody worth nurturing and cultivating in some way.
Yeah, and taking back to Tomorrowland and trying to make this thing happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he had left Tomorrowland and never wanted to go back. Part of it was due to the Athena character, the young girl. Maybe we should talk about that character a little bit because it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the name Athena, we're talking, Greek mythology. Yeah. So there's some symbolism going on there. That's interesting because at the very, very beginning of the film, we haven't talked about this before, but this is the kind of, I guess, the prelude to all of this is they show George Clooney as a young boy, and his first visit to Tomorrowland. He gets given the badge by the Athena character, who's this, a girl of about, let's say, 10 years old, maybe 10 to 12.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And it's inferred that
he was the same age at the same time.
Yeah, well, he was the same age as
the Athena. Yeah.
She, of course, 30 years later or whatever it is, she hasn't aged at all. He's a sort of, she's still the
he's a middle-aged guy.
She's a robot.
Now. Yeah.
But it is inferred at the beginning of the film and at other points throughout the film through the dialogue that as a young boy he fell for her in some way.
Yeah.
And really, really. I don't know, sort of puppy love, if you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
But he was quite hurt by the fact that she, or are willing to actions, and so that is kind of part. I think it's a part of why he left Tomorrowland. There's also the fact that I think he was booted out because of his, I think, opposition to the ideology of the people running Tomorrowland. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of reasons for that.
Yeah, he just got mad. He felt betrayed by the whole thing, and then he didn't want to look back. And that was part of him being the recluse in his house out in the woods. He's like, yeah, whatever. I'm just going to hang out here for the rest of until the world ends because I know that's
basically
happening. Whatever.
Yeah. But they do sort of, again, as we discussed, they do come into contact again, via Casey, of course. And there's at the end of the film where they've just transmitter that's sending the moon to Earth, and they. I think the Athena character gets killed or something like that. Say she sacrifices herself. She performs a sacrifice.
There you go.
So she jumps in front of a gun to save the George Clooney character from being shot with a ray gun or something like that. And she ends up, sort of lying there dying, and she sort of on her deathbed, so to speak, kind of finally admits. In some capacity that she did have some kind of feelings for him. Yeah,
but she can never understand because she's the artificial intelligence thing. So it's she did quite get it. You can't really blame her for that, but that whole deal. But
well, at least he finds out that she wasn't doing it deliberately or maliciously.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. And so there's some comfort and some resolution there for him in some way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of resolved, I suppose.
Yeah. So she was an AI machine. That's kind of interesting. And Yeah, I don't know. Athena, the goddess of civilization, more or less, is what Athena is. Like, all the goddess of the city and all that. And that's basically what that represents. Because any goddess is the same thing. It's just the particular goddesses are specific aspects of of that thing. So it's the material creation that man builds for himself. It's the world that man builds up for himself out of the natural world in the first place, of course, because what else do you have to do? You have all these stones that you convert into walls of a city, basically. That's Athena. Yeah.
There's again, definitely a lot of symbolic significance going on there, there's no doubt her name was not chosen arbitrarily.
So we're talking about the future of civilization here, so it makes sense that goddess would be present. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so there's, I suppose, there's in terms of the symbolic aspects. You've got the placing the whole concept of science up on the altar, presenting it again. I felt, I suppose in almost a religious context, as per like scientism, or in the religion of science.
And showing what's perceived to be like the epitome of the ultimate scientific establishment in modern day, NASA, and sort of the fall of NASA. And that's paralleling the reality of what's going on in NASA, like the end of the space shuttle program and all that. That's right. And NASA has done nothing to stop all these news stories of like, NASA is part of the past, and what are they going to do in the future? We're not going to space anymore. So see you, NASA. You don't have anything else to do because that's all you ever did anyway, right? So they're taking that idea that everybody's familiar with in the news and they're running with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as again, we know that NASA were involved in this film because in the credits it does pay special thanks to NASA. Yeah. But there is a little paragraph under those credits that says, although NASA were involved in this film, the views and ideas or whatever the content of this film does not necessarily reflect the views of NASA, and NASA does not necessarily endorse, the content of the film, which is completely bogus. It's basically just a big advertisement for NASA, and NASA saying, "Please keep us going. Please don't shut us down. You need us. We're the best. We're the epitome of science.
Don't forget about us."
Don't forget about us. It's kind of like Interstellar.
If you do, same thing with Interstellar, because that was NASA too, and because everybody forgot about NASA and their mission. Oh, now the world ends. Same exact idea, exactly the same.
Yep, that's exactly.
So they're really pulling this card in every film they're involved in.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what Interstellar was all about. It was all about, hey, look, you forgot about NASA.
Hey, you know what's funny? No, I'm sorry. You know what's funny is that line that you're talking about in the character saying, the evil character earlier, saying like humans will turn the end of their world into entertainment. That's exactly what NASA's doing here.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Bringing this film. Yeah.
So are they criticizing their own method, or what are they doing here?
Well, this is the thing with the film. There's a lot of, I suppose, what would appear to be counterintuitive messages being put across.
Definitely.
And a lot of conflicting, contradictory messages being put across. And so you're sort of being given one idea, you're being presented with a problem, and then you're being presented with a solution, but then you get the reverse of that. And there's all of these sort of things playing off against one another. So there's kind of like so many dialectics running throughout this film to do with, sort of rationality versus irrationality, optimism versus pessimism, the shutting down NASA versus pumping up NASA and making them the epitome of the scientific establishment moving forward into the future. And sort of the whole the apocalyptic thing versus the utopian thing. It's very, very confusing, and so. This just really reminds me, and I think reemphasizes the fact that, I feel personally that I think this film was made to be deliberately confusing, to push across a whole bunch of different contradictory ideas relating to humanity's future, relating to humanity's relationship with science, to do with the intellect, to do with the whole doomsday thing, but at the same time, not really giving you a sort of a clear message in terms of what the sort of I guess, grand solution or resolution is. I mean, things are resolved in the end, ultimately, because it's a kid's film and you have to. But the vast majority of the film is this very, very strange sort of, I don't know, tapestry of contradictory ideas.
Yeah. Basically, all you have to do is have the right frame of mind, be real positive. Don't let all the other people around you say everything's bad. Don't listen to them. Just find an answer to the problems, and that's all you have to do, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, and of course that kind of ties into, in some ways, some of the New Age ideology in terms of all that is required is positive thinking. I mean, they're not saying that action is not required in the film.
Yeah, that's the difference. They're like be proactive through science and like build something that's going to save the world is the idea.
Yeah, but I think, I guess in summing up the film, I think that's the main meat and potatoes of what we're seeing here is the whole concept of presenting NASA, presenting science
as the answer moving forward in a chaotic world that's falling apart, which will be destroyed unless we find an answer that makes sense via the scientific process.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, we've got George Clooney in this film, who is an interesting character and is also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. So we know that he's in with a lot of big geopolitical power groups and things like that. So I mean, I think this film was deliberately aimed at not only young children but young girls especially as well. To just ram home all of these ideas and to get people, especially children, thinking in the terms that we're talking about.
Get more girls involved in the science fair is what it comes down to. Yeah, it's funny, but people wouldn't think that when they see a movie. They're like, there's no such thing as a movie that's promoting the idea that girls go and pursue science. I mean, I think people can kind of get that idea, but at the same time, they don't put much thought into there's actually a lot of work going on to use culture in this way. You know what I mean? So people can see that that's the message of the movie, but they don't think about it at all afterwards, or what led up to that,
Well, I mean, I think for the majority I would imagine that the majority of people seeing this film would probably walk out of it feeling quite confused, but at the same time, probably subconsciously having adopted at least some of the themes and messages and been more familiarized with them, especially for the younger audiences, So, I mean, this is a very, very confusing film. It actually reminded me somewhat of Jupiter Ascending. Not so much the content, but just the pace of the film. It was so fast paced. There was so much going on. There was not. They don't give you a moment to breathe. You're going from reality to fantasy and back again to the point where they both merge into one. And there's a very, very confusing film. And again, I think that's been done deliberately to just confuse the audience and just.
I think you're probably right. I mean, there's the obvious secret society sort of homage going on here as well.
Oh yeah,
that,
the initiation.
And kids being initiated, special kids being initiated into this special world. They're given the pin and then they go there. That whole idea. So we can see that quite clearly. I mean, that's pretty obvious. So
and that's at the beginning and the end of the film, because as we said, the beginning of the film and the end of the film are basically the same scene. And what it is that it's the sort of reestablishment of the Tomorrowland project, so to speak. They've decided to keep this thing running, and they're now going to start recruiting more kids. And it shows you them handing out all these pins to all these sort of geniuses they found throughout the world, and showing them all sort of pursuing their various talents, and then going off into Tomorrowland to pursue them on an even greater level.
And of course that's the point of this movie, is to get that going in the real world. And you've got the poster here. I'm looking at IMDb. It says Dreamers Wanted at the bottom of the poster. So it's a movie that's, talking to the real kids of the world and saying, hey, look, if you take heed to what the movie tells you, be an optimist, pursue science and all that, you will be initiated into this world and you'll have a good life and all that. And
you might get a job at NASA.
you get a job at NASA, and because of that, the world won't be destroyed. So we need you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, we've got all the typical messages to do with environmentalism, the end of the world, doomsday, apocalyptic themes, with science and NASA at the heart of all that being the answer.
Now wait a minute. I'm sorry. I just thought of something, Adam. there's going to be some people that listen to this maybe, and they're going to be like, well, I don't see anything wrong in this. We should be inspiring kids to pursue science, and all of these ideas that the movie's promoting seem good to me. Like, is there any retort to that you can think of?
Well, it's kind of complex, but I guess what we're trying to get at here is the fact that they are pushing very, very specific narratives to do with things like global warming, carbon footprint. There's a lot of direct references to ice caps melting, things like that.
Yeah.
And these are issues which we know are actually very, very they're a lot more uncertain and a lot more questionable than most people would think.
Yeah,
they're not settled science as is commonly thought to be the case. There is not a consensus on a lot of these issues, but
they're referenced as such. Yeah,
they're referenced as being absolutes, and there's some very, very direct pieces of dialogue in this film which directly state that these things are absolutely 100% true, and we do not have time to debate it.
That's a total lie. And there's no no way you can't deny that. And you know what this movie's doing? It's scaring kids. It's scaring kids, and it's again the contradictory message, because they show this one character as this teacher, and he's like talking about 1984 and saying how it's really good, and we should be
Brave New World as well.
Yeah. It's like 1984, Brave New World, or both. But anyway, he's up there saying, yeah, we should be reading this, and it's good because this is the times we're living in. And then that guy is like shot down by the main character and saying like, well, if we just do something about it, it doesn't matter.
Well, what happens is there's this shot of this, is a teacher in a classroom, and he brings up Fahrenheit 451, he brings up George Orwell's 1984, and he brings up Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And he says these books were written 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, but if you look around you in the world today, you will actually see that we are now living in this world. So he makes a very, very direct reference to that, unequivocally stating that this is basically happening, that we're either there or almost there.
Yeah.
And so that in itself is very, very interesting, because it's, again, like so many other films these days, just kind of touching and making reference to some of the alternative media themes and ideas.
Yeah, and
putting that in a children's film.
What's very interesting is that character shot down as being negative, like in a new agey kind of way. Like, well, you're just being negative. All you got to do is find a solution, and you're fine. And then they turn around and pull out all this crap, like the climate change thing and all that. We're all the ice caps are gonna fall on our heads, and they're gonna turn into water, and we're gonna drown. That stuff. They pull all that stuff out, and they scare you with it. And literally, they're scaring kids with these ideas because kids think this is literally true. And they don't understand that, like, well, maybe part of it's true, maybe part of it isn't. Yeah, they're not thinking like that. They just think it's absolutely true, and the world is going to die unless they do something about it. So this movie is scaring kids, and it's doing it in a very... I would call that a malicious way, because you're basically lying to kids to get your way so that you can tell them what to do. Like, this is what you do, kids.
Yeah,
it pisses me off. I'm sorry.
It does. No, you have absolutely every right to be, because that's exactly what's happening. What they're doing is they're taking a number of problems and issues that we can recognize, but which are a lot more complex and a lot more uncertain than is generally thought to be the case, and they're saying they're simplifying them. They're infantilizing them. They're making them absolutes. They're saying this is absolutely how things are going to be. This is the problem. This is absolutely the truth. This is the way things are. And if and basically we're fucked. You know? And then of course you've got the Casey character retorting that and saying, well, don't we just need to think positive? So
in a sense, that's good, because yes, we should always be looking for solutions, but we shouldn't just brush off stuff that is real and then amplify stuff that probably isn't real at all. And you know what I mean. We can see what's going on here.
We can see what's going on here. So I mean, I guess to sum it up there, it's taking real issues, which are, again, much more nuanced, much more complex,
and difficult to find a solution for.
Things that don't have, canned solutions for them, and saying, well, actually, they are absolutely as they are being presented here, and here is the canned solution. And there's very, very direct, unequivocal, clear message being sent to children in that regard, and for that reason, I think you're correct in saying that there's something a little bit malicious about that, and so. To those people in the audience who may retort and say, well, what's wrong with all of this? I mean, well, there you go. you know?
Yeah. And you know, I think the answer to those sorts of problems aren't as simple as kids doing really good at the science fair.
No,
It's not that simple.
No, the obsession with technology and the assumption that technology and science will save us from everything and anything we can think of is in part of the problem itself.
Yeah, exactly. Because every new technology comes with like all these unforeseen consequences anyway.
Well, yeah, every new piece of technology creates another problem which has got to be resolved, which necessitates more technology to resolve that problem, which, you know, and it just down the line it goes, you know?
Yeah, people like to deny that, but it is the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We can see that in the world, you know, just look out the window, you know, look what's happening in the world around you. I mean, it's very, very obvious. So, yeah.
I don't know. But, this is a crazy film. I'm glad that we did get to watch it because I really wanted to watch it, so we finally made it back to it. I think, I don't know, is there anything else that you really want to mention? I think I've done enough here.
I think we've covered it here. Again, apologies to the audience if this is a bit sort of all over the place and messy, but I mean, if you've watched the film, I think you'll understand why. It's very it's all over the show. It's very, very intense. There's not a moment's sort of break in the pace of the film. It's charging at 100% the whole time, going from fantasy to reality to back again, and to a point where they're both basically the same thing. And so it's very, very difficult to actually reiterate the plot in any kind of concise or easily interpretable fashion. But yeah, again, just to reiterate, I think this is a deliberate method of pushing these ideas across through this massive melange of confusing ideas whereby children are not really going to understand what's going on, but are going to walk out of that theater having been imbued with a sense of the world is going to end unless we really, really take science seriously and get into technology in a big way.
Sense of purpose. It gives them
sense of purpose.
And I don't know if you want to break it down to like the sort of typical movie review. I'd say that this isn't really the best movie.
No,
it's not the worst movie we've reviewed, but it's it's certainly.
It's pretty silly.
Yeah, it's silly and confusing, and so it's not the best. So I wouldn't really recommend to go watch it if you know what I mean.
No.
Yeah.
So it's in terms of some of the other films we've done, we've done reviews of much better films, and I can't say that I really, really hugely enjoyed this film. But again, the reason we're covering it is for the reasons we've just been talking about.
It's somewhere above Assault on Wall Street, but far below Chappie.
Far below Chappie. Yeah. But again, we know that NASA was involved. We know that we've probably got other political institutions involved, and so we know that this is very, very deliberate. And there's no mistakes in this film.
We can see the agendas again from all these different white papers making their way into the purpose of this movie. Yeah. So obviously, obviously we've got this as an important project with certainly lots of people consulting or whatever on this. This is an important movie.
Yeah, definitely an important movie. Obviously, a lot of contact with, again, organizations like NASA and God knows who else. I think I can't remember. I definitely remember a lot of other big organizations being mentioned in the credits as well. Yeah. So, this was well formulated, and I don't think there were any mistakes made in this film. So, for all its confusingness, and despite it being not being a very good film, I don't think there was any errors made there. I think it was made to be just the way it is, and it came out exactly as intended. So with that, we'll end the review here. Thank you very much, listeners, for listening. If you're not subscribed to this podcast, please subscribe to the RSS feed or on iTunes, Stitcher Radio. Our website is tmpodcast.com, so check out the website. We got some other stuff up there for you too. Yeah, we've got more content coming soon, and again, as we've referenced in previous reviews, we will be making a short mini documentary video project. So that's going to take a little while to put together, but I would implore the audience to stay tuned for that, because I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm looking forward to the finished product, because I think it's going to be pretty cool. Yeah, so something to look forward to there. So otherwise, just stay tuned to the podcast, and if there's anybody else out there who likes movie reviews, let them know. Send them the website, tmpodcast.com, or whatever. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, and also if you, the audience, have got films that we haven't covered or that you think that we should know about or that you'd perhaps like us to take a look at and review, by all means, send us an email. The contacts can be found on the website page. So we'd love to hear from you. Yes.
All right, Adam. Well, I'll see you next time. It was a lot of fun. I look forward to the next one.
As always, Aaron, over and out.
Today's episode of Themes and Memes was recorded on the 9th and 10th of October, 2015.